The feud was framed as a clash between two of the best technical wrestlers of the era, and that was no exaggeration. Both were at the top of their game. Curt brought his signature cocky arrogance, making fans cheer even louder for Bret. However, behind the scenes, Curt was in excruciating pain. He wrestled that match with a broken tailbone and a bulging disc in his back. Despite the agony, he was determined not to forfeit the title. He battled through the pain to deliver arguably the greatest WWF match of the early 90s. After the match, it seemed like the end of a short but explosive career. Doctors advised him to undergo spinal fusion surgery, but Curt refused. Instead, he cashed out an insurance policy with Lloyd's of London, reportedly worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The insurance payout meant that Curt could no longer wrestle, effectively retiring him from active competition. However, that didn't mark the end of his time with the WWF. McMahon offered Mr. Perfect a role beside him at the commentary table, and Curt was excited to take on this new assignment. It allowed him to continue contributing to the business he loved. Curt was, without a doubt, damn near perfect as a commentator. He was funny, sharp, and knew the storylines inside and out. He truly shone when he had someone to bounce off of, which was evident in his banter with Vince McMahon at the commentary table. This chemistry carried on when Curt became Ric Flair's executive consultant. Even when Flair was the one delivering promos, Curt's facial expressions in the background elevated the segments further. During the year or so that they worked together, Curt and Flair became close friends. But of course, Curt got along with everyone. Naturally funny and a lover of pranks and practical jokes, he was a beloved figure backstage. Unfortunately, despite being out of the ring, his back never fully healed. To manage the pain, Curt increasingly relied on prescription painkillers. At the 1992 Survivor Series, there was a tag match planned between the Ultimate Warrior and Randy Savage against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. However, just before the show, the Ultimate Warrior abruptly left the WWF. Vince McMahon struggled to find a suitable replacement and ultimately turned to Curt. Initially, Curt was reluctant to come out of retirement as he was still receiving insurance payouts. To convince him, Vince paid off the remainder of Curt's insurance settlement and added a significant bonus. The deal worked, and Mr. Perfect returned to the ring. For the first time in his career, he was turned into a babyface, a role he excelled at. Curt sent Ric Flair packing back to WCW in a loser leaves town match in January 1993. He went on to feud with the likes of Shawn Michaels and Lex Luger. However, it never felt like Mr. Perfect was destined to become the WWF champion. Vince was unwilling to take that risk given Curt's fragile back condition, and Curt was well aware of it. Reports surfaced of Curt growing frustrated, not only because he wasn't considered for the WWF title, but also because he was being overlooked for the Intercontinental title. By this time, Curt's in-ring performance was visibly diminished. He couldn't move like he used to, and was terrified of worsening his back despite the heavy medication he was taking. By the end of 1993, he stepped away from the ring once again. Curt returned sporadically as a special guest referee and commentator, but never maintained the same presence he once had. In 1996, Vince McMahon pushed for Curt to make another in-ring return. However, Curt was hesitant, as he was expecting a $300,000 lump sum from his insurance deal, money he intended to retire on. But out of nowhere, Lloyd's of London denied the payout. Curt believed Vince had a hand in this to force him back into the ring, although that was never proven. Furious, Curt reached out to Eric Bischoff to gauge interest in a move to WCW. The two met and hit it off instantly, with Bischoff later describing it as feeling like they'd known each other for years. However, Curt was still under WWF contract until February 1997. After that meeting, Curt stopped showing up for WWF commitments. He no-showed scheduled commentary work and appearances on WWF's peripheral shows. Vince attempted to sue WCW for contract tampering, but it was futile. Curt was out the door and on his way to Atlanta. Curt made his WCW debut at Bash at the Beach in 1997 in a tag team match. During his WCW tenure, he had memorable moments, including runs as the US champion and tag team champion. He was also a part of the NWO and reunited with his close friend Ric Flair. However, like Flair, Kurt enjoyed partying and his drug use escalated. He began showing up to Nitro looking bloated and fatigued, with reports of him even being intoxicated at times. By the summer of 2000, Kurt's WCW contract expired, and he decided to take a break from wrestling. Fans were shocked when Mr. Perfect appeared at the 2002 Royal Rumble. His return was well received, and he seemed to enjoy being back in the WWF. Many in the locker room, who had grown up idolizing him, were eager to work with the legend. However, just 5 months after his return, Kurt was released. During the infamous plane ride from hell, a commercial flight from the UK to the US, several wrestlers behaved poorly. Kurt, intoxicated, got into a physical altercation with Brock Lesnar, and the two slammed into the emergency exit. The chaos resulted in WWE firing several involved, including Kurt. In the months following, Kurt appeared on various independent wrestling shows. Tragically, on the morning of February 10, 2003, he was found dead in a Florida hotel room. He passed away from acute cocaine intoxication, with steroids and painkillers also contributing to his death. Curt Hennig was just 44 years old. He left behind a wife and 4 children. Even now, more than 2 decades after his passing, Kurt is remembered as one of the greatest professional wrestlers to ever live.